Welcome to the Brave and Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here in today's episode. We have Audrey, and she's here to talk about burnout, which I think a lot of us are experiencing, after 2020 and the last 2 years actually. So Audrey, thank you for being brave and being here and this podcast and. Yeah, so do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. And thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast. I'm so excited to be part of it. So a little about me. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for almost 5 years now. It's like a time warp. I have to think about these things. Yeah. But I've done that for a while now. And it's been a blessing, but I've had my own problems even before that, just fighting depression and anxiety and things like that. So my healing journey through all of this, and as I've started to become a nurse and see people at their sickest moments of their life, I've started to learn a lot more about what I want to do as far as myself and preventative type of medicine. And I've gotten so much more it's funny because I'm a nurse, right? But I've gotten into this holistic pattern of living and learned so much from kind of Eastern philosophy and Eastern medicine and that kind of thing. And really just tried to kind of change the way I live my life. And through that, I've been able to help a lot of people. So I started my podcast, the Ready to Rise podcast, which is how we've connected, is with our podcasting. And yeah, that's kind of my story, is just all of that up until recently. And right now I feel like I found myself, and I really was doing so great at changing my life. And now I feel like I'm in another type of pivot, kind of changing my life again to make sure we always want to be happy, and I want to be consistently happy. So kind of at a pivot again.
And you know what, I think pivoting when you feel like you need it, I think that's great. And I think that just because you pivot once doesn't mean that that's the road that you're gonna be stuck with the rest of your life. We're allowed to pivot 1,000,000 times a year if we need to.
Totally. And sometimes we have to. I remember feeling like, I'm like, oh my God, well, I had this kind of morning routine, or I was doing whatever it is, and I was doing so good. I felt great. And then now I'm kind of not again. I'm super burnt out. And so it's like, okay, well, now I'm kind of learning again, incorporating new strategies, which we'll talk about, new strategies into learning how to get through this burnout period. So yeah. And it's amazing, I think, to share it with people, because I don't think sometimes when we're isolated or we're not speaking about this, especially as women, because we feel like we have to have it all together all the time and look so perfect. And so we don't always share it. Yeah. So this is amazing.
Yeah. I can relate to that too. And I 100% agree about sharing our stories. That's why I created this podcast too, to be able to share the stories and other women feel like they're not alone, because oftentimes I felt alone, and I've also struggled with the whole burnout. I feel like I was complaining and, why complaining, if I have quote unquote things, good or whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you just feel like, whatever worked in 2020, let's say, whatever worked in 2020 didn't necessarily have to be working in 2021. Exactly. And it's completely fine to let go of some things and work on yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Just making it like a guilt-free process, because that way we'll actually do it for ourselves.
Of course. So what are the events that led you, or I don't know if there's events or just little things or one major thing, but what led you to burnout?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even really notice that I was burnt out until, oh my gosh, this is such a vulnerable story, but I I want to share it because we all go through it. There was one night I remember just so stressed I couldn't sleep, and it was like 2 a.m. And I woke up and I went to my fridge and I was eating cookie dough at 2 a.m. out of my refrigerator. And I was like, whoa, like, hold on, hold on. That's like a type of behavior we all indulge from time to time. But I was like, that is a strange type of behavior I've never done before. So that was kind of like one of those bottoms where I realized something's really wrong and I need to fix it. I think kind of everything started definitely with COVID, the whole pandemic. Just being, all of us, everybody, it doesn't matter where you lived, we all felt some type of stress during that time because we're facing something completely unknown. We don't know, at that time we weren't vaccinated. We didn't know how it could affect us, how it was transmitted. I remember all of us, like, it goes through your eyes, or, somebody even coughs and they're in your neighborhood, like you can get sick. Or as nurses, we were freaking out. And just all of that, the unknown was so scary. Then you take on top of that and you add the isolation that we all experienced, and again, it doesn't matter where you live. If you couldn't see loved ones, or we're so scared to go to the store even, or just any of that. Or I remember people look at you funny if they're next to you at a stoplight and your windows are down. I mean, it was so isolating. You feel like we couldn't even go to the store or go do anything. So that causes so much stress and so much burnout. And for me, on top of that, is I was or I still am a COVID nurse at that time. And we had no idea what was happening. I went to work and was just kind of thrown into that type of nursing one day, of course, without preparation, so we didn't know. And as that continued on for the last 2 years, it has been so challenging. There's all the COVID floors tend to have a minimal help because they meaning like hospital, management or whatever, people making the decisions, they don't want to have so many caregivers exposed to COVID. So they limit the amount of personnel allowed on that floor. So minimal help. We're all kind of doing everything together. The kitchen would like drop the trays off in the front of the door, and we'd have to go and get these patients' meals and bring them in. I mean, just that kind of thing. It was so much extra work for us. And burnout occurs when we feel completely stressed, but then have limited resources on top of that. That's what generally leads to burnout. Plus, on top of that, when you have an extended amount of emotional stress as well, watching people pass, watching, loved ones not be able to come in at the bedside to say goodbye to their family members. And I mean, I could go on and on about the emotional stress, but it was very difficult. So I think when all of that compiled for me, and I woke up one night and I was just like broken down, and I just felt like, how do I deal with this stress? Because I'm seeing now, at that time, the patterns that were then affecting me. I wasn't working out as much as I used to. I wasn't eating so healthy. I was starting to get very grouchy, which is not my personality. I wanted to call in sick, and take time off work. But then the amount of guilt that I felt leaving coworkers there to deal with things without myself being there, of course, made me feel even worse. So I wouldn't do that. But yeah, it became like almost this spiral, because as we don't take care of ourselves, the burnout can get even worse.
Right. Or, you just start experiencing also all these physical symptoms, right? Getting sick yourself. And
yeah, or weight gain was an issue. I had lost a lot of weight before COVID started, or kind of at the beginning, and then started gaining most of it back, just even from the stress or skipping meals and then eating something very heavy. Stress makes us keep weight on as well. That, and then just the mental health, where instead of coming home and wanting to maybe read a good motivational book or something like that, I'd come home and just go straight to bed because I was so emotionally exhausted.
yeah, I'm sure that must be really hard. I mean, right now, I'm not sure how things are, but I'm sure in the beginning was horrible to see things that kind of unexpected, because it's a pandemic that no one expected, right? And it just came
Yeah.
out of nowhere, and things were very unknown, like you said, for a few months. Um, and yeah, I can only imagine the stress, the mental and emotional stress on top of body stress that you
Right.
went through.
Yeah. So fast forward a little ways. I'm very thankful for my fellow coworkers who we all finally just kind of looked at each other and a few months in, and we were like, you know what, this isn't ending. Like, this is kind of a horrible situation that we're all in. It's really hard what we're going through, and it's not ending. So instead of us constantly being on this high level of stress and being like, go, go, go at work, we need to start figuring out how we are going to incorporate some kind of self-care during that 12.5 hour shift. And one friend of mine, she was training for, I think, a marathon at that time. And so she's so interested in drinking water. And I love her for that.
Add
And
more
she
water
just every day, yep. She's like, okay, guys, we haven't been doing these last few days because we're just so busy, but we have to just, stop. We need to drink our water. And then my next thing was like, okay, guys, I know that working out helps me a lot, even if it's just kind of a 15 or 20-minute workout. In the morning time, when our stress hormones are all very high, it's good for us to do some kind of workout at that time to kind of bring our bodies back into like a balanced state. So I was like, okay, guys, like we all matched up our iWatches, like, let's do some workouts, like, let's encourage each other, let's get going. And then somebody else was really interested in eating healthy and was sharing recipes and all of that. So I think like the biggest takeaway from that part is just knowing that community is so huge. And that's like what we're doing here, like talking to each other or having podcasts or whatever it is. It doesn't matter if you don't work together at the same, hospital, or, you're not at the same school as teachers or neighbors or whatever it is. You can link up with people on Facebook that are like across the nation from you
right.
and still encourage each other to kind of start to prevent this burnout that everyone's feeling by doing these healthy habits and incorporating them.
Yeah, and I think that people also show their burnout in different ways. Like you
Yeah.
said, for you was gaining weight. For others
Mhm.
might be, I don't know, or like also like you said, showing like being grouchy when
Yeah.
it's not part of your personality.
Yeah, totally. Um, some people, I guess it's kind of coming out now with all the new research that burnout is starting to become categorized underneath depression. Like they're seeing it as like a long-term depression type state. But it's caused by external sources versus we normally think of depression as like an internal imbalance. And it's really interesting because some people they just show a bunch of signs of depression, like not keeping up with their laundry, maybe not, and maybe then you're not eating well,
Yeah.
not because you're stress eating, but you're just so tired you don't want to go to the grocery store, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see that the correlation on being linked to, I guess, to depression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also went through burnout last year and earlier this year, to the point where I just had to take some time off. I quit my job like 3 months ago now.
Yeah.
And I can tell the difference between earlier this year and now. Like I'm slowly getting there, but I'm slowly getting to the place where like I feel more like myself. But towards the end, I everything that you've been describing, that's what I was
Yeah.
feeling. Like the whole gaining weight and the whole
Yeah.
feeling stressed, feeling angry all the time,
Yes.
irritated, feeling sad, like I would be crying for no reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you see how also the correlation between like having limited resources impacts all of that too? Where it's like you can picture a mom, like if you picture, I'm thinking of one of those like old kind of like a meme of like a housewife from like the 50s or something, right? Who maybe isn't working but has like several children, and she's trying to iron her husband's suit and like cook dinner at the same time, vacuum, and then talk to her in-laws and like, help them. And then her husband comes home from work, and she's then tending to him as well. And it's like that in itself is just the picture of burnout, because
Mm-hmm.
instead of being able to do all of those things easily, like we pretend like we can as women,
Yeah.
it's truly like a recipe for burnout because we don't have resources. Like that's why nowadays so many of us seek external resources, like maybe a lot of people are doing like the grocery delivery or getting food delivered to their homes or sending their laundry out, that kind of thing. And that's all because we're so tired. We don't have resources necessarily in our jobs, or maybe with the whole COVID pandemic happening, we maybe had a hard time with daycare for kids or whatever. So then we're seeking other resources instead.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. For me, you know what, I don't see that kind of,
Uh-huh.
maybe there is, it's there, but I don't see it, or I didn't see it. For me, it was more of, just kind of like not going with the flow necessarily, but just pushing through
Yeah.
a lot of like hard things, and
Mm-hmm.
not taking the proper care of myself and taking
Mm-hmm.
breaks.
Yeah, we do that. Like if we feel that there aren't enough, like I'm going back to the resources, but like if you feel like there aren't enough resources, like maybe a husband who isn't able to cook the dinner or whatever, something like that. Um, and then we feel like we have to do every single thing. That's what causes us to then start to feel all of that, like feeling so grouchy or feeling like, I'm not getting any sleep because now I have to stay up later and do all these extra things. And then I think it kind of goes back into the whole societal pressure that, we all talk about so much, where it's almost like we're shamed if we ask for help.
Yeah.
And
Or
that's just, it's not fair.
we feel shame too, because I mean, I'm speaking for myself as well. Taking breaks, because we
Yeah.
don't want to seem as like
Yeah.
weak, or not being able to handle things. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, we're not meant to handle all the things and everything.
No, we're trying to do way too much. And like technology has kind of caused that to happen for us, or just this whole like, era that we're in, I guess, where it's there's a movie, it's called, I forget what it's called. It's like how does she do it or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But it's like a mom, who's super busy doing all the things, and she literally gets like 2 hours of sleep a night.
Wow.
And we just can't sustain that, but we feel like that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so we don't give ourselves a break. So I think like as we talk about healing burnout and trying to, become the best version of ourselves and that kind of thing, it really, really is important to make sure that we are asking for help, that we're taking things off of our plate. Like I always make the joke about the store-bought brownies, because I feel like everybody thinks they have to stay up till 2 a.m. and make all these homemade brownies for like the bake sale at the kids' school or something. Just buy the, Costco or whatever brownies, like who cares? Um, we need to focus on our self and our self-care.
Yeah. Yeah, because my thing is that if you don't take care of yourself, then how can you take care of others?
You can't, yeah. And who's going to do it for you?
Right. You have
Even
to
if
fill
you
up
have,
your own cup. You can't
yeah,
pour from an empty cup.
exactly. You can't. And nobody's going to stop you and say, like, you need to, do this for yourself. And we have to be able to do it for ourselves. That's the most important thing. I think now that I've really recognized burnout and I'm learning kind of how to do that for myself, I've I have learned how to say no, which is really hard. That's like one of the first things. I've always been the one, they always call me if there's a shift that needs to be picked up at work, or, family always calls me if I need to babysit or pick up someone's dog from doggy daycare or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning, like, no, I can't. And it doesn't mean that I don't love them. It doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I can't fit that on my plate right now.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things. And then that allows me to have that time to take care of myself and, to be able to meal prep something that's healthy versus ordering in, or that kind of thing, or getting to, my workout routine.
Yeah. I'm also working on the whole meal prepping thing. We did it, or I used to do it for sometime a few years ago. And then, with, when COVID started, or when COVID happened, and we were home, I didn't see a need to do meal prepping
Yeah,
anymore because we
totally.
were home, right? We were home
Yeah.
the whole time. But we started eating out a lot too.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I'm trying to go back to like the meal prepping, and it just makes it so much easier. I tried it for last month, and it makes it so much easier. Like for
So much
breakfast,
easier.
you don't have to think about, oh, what am I gonna have for breakfast? Like you
Yeah.
just go to the freezer, pull out whatever you already made. Like yes, you spend one day,
Yeah.
like let's say in the beginning of the month, you spend one whole day cooking and prepping and all this stuff, but then the rest of the week or the rest of the month or whatever, but however long you do it for, you don't have to do anything.
Easy.
Yeah.
It's so much easier. I love doing that. And I hate cooking. I despise cooking. But sometimes I'll get things that are easy to meal prep for me, like, salad or whatever. And you can buy things that are still healthy, but that are already kind of done for you. Like, you can buy your lettuce already chopped, and it costs more because they're doing all the work for you. But, you can still find a lot of things that are here. I don't know if they have it where you're at, but here at our Sprouts market, they have like cooked chicken, like it's already cooked and shredded, but there's nothing added to it. It's just plain, like clean, So yeah, it just makes it so much easier to do that. And then you're eating things that are good for you, which gives you the energy to continue taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Sprouts also has these like meals already. They're not cooked. All you have to do literally is just put them in the oven and
Nice.
cook, and they're really good.
Ah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like doing what we can. And then I think, like, going back to what we were saying, is just not being guilty about that. Like, I'm not guilty if I buy, something that's already like halfway done for me, or if I, need to call a friend to, do a favor for me, or whatever it is. Like, the point is spending time to take care of ourselves. And if that makes us feel bad, then we have to start doing that work on that dialogue, right? Because we should never feel guilty for taking care of ourselves.
Right. So what tips do you have to I know you're right now, you said you're not 100% out of your burnout stage.
Yeah.
I'm not either. I'm still working, and I think it's a work in progress, and it's every day you take 3 steps forward, and then the next day you take 2 steps backward, but as long as you keep moving, I think that's what counts, right? But what tips do you have to to move forward and to move out of that burnout?
So I think definitely number one is, we've already talked about it, but just don't guilt yourself. Don't guilt yourself for the past, and don't guilt yourself for setting boundaries in the future. Biggest thing we all have to do. But then next is really simple steps. And that's like, it's all about the basics. Like, instead of buying some quick gimmick thing, that you see on TV that's going to make your life easier or whatever it is, it's not about that. It's about just bringing it back to the basics, just eating really well. If you want, like we just said, the Sprouts meals or whatever, just bring it to the basics. Eat really well, try to eat a lot of vegetables. Working on your gut health is huge. I've been focusing a lot on that lately, with different people I've been interviewing, and I'm reading a book called I'm So Effing Tired. It's really good. And she also talks a lot about gut health, and just as we feed ourself the things that our body naturally wants to eat, the cravings for junk go away.
Okay.
And then that gives you better energy.
Oh.
Then you can start having more energy to do like some kind of movement, even if it's like a quick workout at home, or, a class, a walk around the block, whatever it is, just anything to kind of get us moving, especially in nature. That's probably one of the biggest things we can do to help heal burnout is get sunshine, get time in nature.
Yeah.
Have to get some fresh air, and then sleep. So it sounds so simple, but we need to be sleeping at least about 8 hours a night. And not a lot of us are doing that.
And it
And
sounds like a lot, but
it does.
that's what your body needs.
Yeah. And it's like what we said at the beginning, like where we almost brag about the things we do that lead us to burnout. Like, I worked this many shifts, or I got 4 hours of sleep and I'm fine. But we need to do that stuff that helps our body heal.
Yeah.
All of those are like the natural things that our bodies want and need. And so sleep is just so important. We need to get the 8 hours. A couple hours before you know that it's your time to go to sleep, we shut down the electronics, blue light, maybe go into reading a book, forget the stress, don't watch the late night news, just all of that, where we're supposed to eat, I guess, about 3 hours before we go to sleep.
Okay.
And so just kind of like let that be just a relaxing time. So maybe do some journaling or something that kind of brings you into a relaxation state. And those are the best tips, along with reducing our stress levels. And all of those will help us reduce stress levels as well. So that's probably that's one of the biggest things with burnout, because it all comes from stress.
Yeah, that's so true. What is do you have one word or quote or song or saying, something that when you feel like, when you feel down, something that lifts you up? Do you have something like that?
Girl, I have this word I like to think of often. It's elevate. That was my word for 2021, but I'm still keeping it around right now. I have it, I have a sign on my wall that says it. I have a bracelet that has that word on it. And whenever I'm feeling kind of like down, I try to remember, okay, what do I need to do to elevate myself? What will make me feel better? I'm also a big believer. I think I learned this from Gabby Bernstein. I'm a big believer in setting small alarms or reminders on our phones. And I'll use different things, but I love to write that word on there. So it'll remind me, maybe twice a day, elevate. And I see it and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I don't need to get sucked into whatever's happening around me that's stressful. I need to go eat my salad, or I need to go for a walk.
Right.
So that helps me.
Yeah, I love it. Elevate.
Yeah.
So lastly, where can we find you? Where can we follow your journey and just know more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm always posting on Instagram. It's at Hello Audrey Rose. And from there in the bio, you can link to my Facebook group and my podcast, Ready to Rise. All of that's in there. I'm always sharing tips of the things that I'm learning as I heal and as I recover.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for sharing your journey through burnout and being so vulnerable and honest with your journey.
Yeah. And congrats to you for quitting your job.
Thank you.
We need to congratulate each other on all these steps we're taking to make our lives better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a pleasure. I'm glad we got to finally connect.
Yes, I love having you here and talking about something that I can totally relate. And, I
Yeah.
know if I can relate, I know there's a lot more women out there that can relate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @thebravenher. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.